What's up, fam? So today we're gonna talk about Fight Club. And with Fight Club, I was gonna go through it and talk about certain stuff, but then when I was going through the movie, I realized that this movie is extremely prophetic of modern times and masculinity. This movie is legitimately like one to one with a lot of social problems that society is facing, or like some ideas how they're bouncing around. For example, this movie, it's basically this, right? This is how it works. Masculinity has been stripped from men. Men are looking at what masculinity was given them, the light and the heavens that it provided for them, and the stability and the search for greater things, and how that is not being given to them socially. So then men seek towards that masculinity again. Once they're in that sense of masculinity and maleness, they get enveloped into that environment to the point that they become maybe too extremist into it, and then they become socially chaotic in society. And fam, that is 1000% what is going on through society. Let's say for the last 10 years, you have seen a lot of those issues. And now men, they're gravitating to more, they're becoming more, let's say, more politically deviant into those ideas of masculinity, and sometimes they get fallen for like influence and things like that might be a bit too disruptive and that are incorrect. But it follows the plot completely one to one. At the beginning, right, of the film of Fight Club, you basically deal it, the main narrator by Edward Norton. He is going to an event of therapy where he's going for testicular cancer, and it's basically telling you that you have lost your balls. Like, that's the very idea, right? The core of men is to have balls. That's a lot of what we are. And I know it sounds very like straightforward, but you got to think about it like abstract and like almost like your biological soul. You're meant to impregnate women. Is what give you the movement in society to move forward. Is what give you your soul. Men that are suffering is basically because they have lost their masculinity or that essence to be driven into. So now our narrator, right, Edward Norton, he's in this therapy session. And in this therapy session, what is he looking forward to, right? And what he's looking forward to is to let go, because he has a lot of repressed emotions from his lack of masculinity that he's looking for any way to alleviate that sort of death and abyss that has been created by him. And at one point he's crying, right? He says that the moment where he was able to let go was when he hugged this man called Bob, and Bob has incredibly huge boobs, right? Because he's gone through hormone therapy and his testosterone is very high, so now he's overproducing estrogen, and that's causing him to have incredibly large breasts. So Edward Norton puts his face in his breast, and he starts crying like really loud, right? He's learned that he's able to let go. And that part is very important, right? Because you're finding a way to let go of that repression that you have as a male. And that's how Fight Club is presenting it. It seemed a little bit, the scene itself can be very comedic, but it's also very strong, like, because testicular cancer is like extremely heavy on a human male. It's probably one of the hardest things you could go through as a male, right? Because it's really reducing you in so many ways, right? And fam, there's probably like a bunch more essays that you can find on Fight Club and on this. So if you want to look into those topics, I really recommend it because it's just fun. Because Fight Club is very much about masculinity, right? There's always been this joke flying around within the people that talk about this, that women don't get Fight Club. And obviously that's incorrect. Like, women can get anything they want, but there's some essence into that the lived experience of the male and the masculinity can be better understood. And in order to understand that, you have to, Fight Club is only understood through that perspective. It's almost like if you understand motherhood, you were a mother, you can tell a male sort of, and the male can investigate that idea of what's motherhood. But in theory, you have to be a male to get male topics to this degree, right? So there's probably some truth to that. But let's not be radical that obviously women couldn't understand Fight Club, because that's ridiculous. But I hope you guys just understand that essence. So basically, our narrator, Edward Norton, is a man that is lacking masculinity, and he's going through therapy after therapy, trying to find an essence of where he's able to reclaim that sort of what's lost from him, right? And you see him doing stuff that is almost like feminine, or ideas that are just kind of placating everything that he feels for something else. Like, he goes and buys furniture. Furniture when you have to, you also think about it like this. It's almost like an idea of nesting, and nesting is something that the women would do, right? In the animal kingdom, they will create a nest so they can raise their young, or they can give birth, or even in our society, women demand at home to raise children, so men have to work towards that in order to create it. So you can see the idea that this man, right, that has no wife, it has very little motive to live for, now has, is doing things that are not giving him the meaning that he needs to. Ideas that are just fulfillment for another biological creature rather than himself. There's this point, right, where Edward Norton is in a plane, and he's flying, right, and he's wishing that the plane would kind of collapse, would explode. Well, not explode, but rip himself apart. It's in something dramatic. Again, the same idea to feel, to taste something that must be real, that's given to him by masculinity, but that has been deprived to him. And then at that moment, you also get Tyler Durden, right, Brad Pitt, who tells him this story that passengers are given oxygen, because if you give them oxygens, they become more calm, and they're able to, if there's some crisis from the plane, they're able to survive, and calmness will help them. He tells them they're like Hindu cows, that they're just calm. And you have to understand that a bit too, in the essence that you're just trying to dull the idea of the masculine, right? Because the masculine is the kind of idea that when you're in a plane, you kind of, your mind, if you're a man, right, you kind of have thought about it. It's like, what if this plane starts crashing? What if that wing in the plane breaks himself off, and I have to be a superhero? Maybe I can grab a parachute and jump out of this plane. It's something excessive, right? Something like, but they're just masculine ideas. Like, oh, can I, if I'm in this room, how many of these men can I fight? Or am I able to take on a stampeding mammoth coming towards me? Those are ideas that are driven by our biology, and our need to either create violence or create destruction, or kind of be used as a tool as a man. So those ideas are buried within the human, and Fight Club understands that, and that's what's repressing this male from achieving something that he knows is out there. It's almost, there's a truth, right? There's a truth out there that he understands it, and that's going to elevate him if he's able to reach it. For him, is this biology that is embedded in him as a character. And everything sort of begins, right? Like the first setup of the film is just, teaching you that this man has lost himself from what he is. And then afterward, when it begins, it truly begins when they have the first fight in Fight Club. That's where the masculine starts to become alive. Because fighting is something that's almost entirely masculine. It's obviously it's not, right? So don't take it as something sexist. But violence and masculinity, it's something that's ingrained in the male, right? It's something that we do it because we have excess testosterone. Sometimes we have to fight for class. We might have to fight for hierarchy. I have to be the best one of the tribe to make sure that I'm able to be, my family survives. So I'm always have to be the best. So fighting is in essence that's like a soul inside of us. So at this moment, when they're in the diner, right? No, they're at the bar. Brad Pitt and Edward Norton start fighting. They started testing themselves because they don't. Well, as Tyler Durden says, he doesn't want to die without any scars, right? He wants to feel that idea. He wants to feel that because he doesn't feel complete as a man because he has been repressed by society. Society has squished his masculinity down because they need him to be calm. Because you need to work with society to stabilize it. And a man that doesn't work with society is destabilizing it, right? So you don't bring that calmness or the social balance that is needed when you're being a male and you're engaging into this aspects of fighting. Because fighting in itself is not something that, we kind of are against it in society, right? When we see it out in the streets, we kind of stop it. We don't want to see two males bleeding. That's just something that doesn't happen. We see it in sports and things like that in more secluded environments, but it's not something that socially we would see it. But the male, throughout all existence, fighting is something that they've been doing and that they grown to love to do. So that fire is still within them. So as Edward Norton and Brad Pitt fight, they discover themselves. And this is the first time that you start seeing the narrator, Edward Norton, taking effect and becoming something else, right? Almost achieving that self-realization. This is similar to the last couple of videos that I've done with the Truman Show, let's say Inception, about realizing yourself and seeking that ultimate truth. In here, that ultimate truth is almost like that masculinity that's pushing you. They start looking at things truly different than themselves. Like when they start forming the Fight Club, the way they choose random people. They choose people that could be a bartender, somebody that's living within its life in a sort of cage of the environment. But then the way they explained it too is like you saw this man being an office worker, but when you bring him out here into the world of Fight Club, he's a menace. He's violent. He's able to show who he really is, right? His masculinity is fine and he has become something. It's not something that has been replaced by society or the need to pay bills. In here, he has risen above that and become something truly mesmerizing and epic, right? In fighting, he has developed himself as something grander than the ambitious society was given him. At one point too, they also they were making fun of supermodels. They're inside the bus and they see a poster of a supermodel with perfectly chiseled abs, and they kind of make fun of it, right? They're like, is that how a man is supposed to look like? And their realization is that those aesthetics, that's just to look sort of pretty. But looking pretty, is that, that's a bit feminine, isn't it? You don't want to look pretty. And I know because the abs are, a man that has abs and have good muscular look, that's great for women and sexual attraction. That doesn't mean strength most of the time. It can mean strength, right? But what I'm saying is that there's this aesthetic of prettiness to it that can be less masculine than it really is. While these men are out there in the floor of Fight Club fighting each other bloodily, whereas you truly test the idea of the masculine, right? Being broken down by others, and they and this emotion is how all of them are able to access that new state of being, right? They're able to rise into something better than men. And as you see this, right, as the men start discovering themselves through fighting, what they're also becoming is antisocial, right? And that masculinity continues to evolve, and it becomes something else as the movie progresses, because we see from that self, almost that freedom that they've been given, they also been given a different type of order by Brad Pitt. Because at the end of the film, at the third part, right, of the film, when it starts to become something else, you realize that all these men have joined the new their club of Fight Club has evolved into something else, right? Which is something destructive to society, because that's how it would progress, right? The idea, we don't put boundaries on men for a reason, right? That is just because we want them to not be masculine. It's because as a society grows, it's not good to have men fighting all the time. You don't want to go to a bar and then your uncle dies. That's not appropriate. So having that regression or that suppression of masculinity is something almost necessary for just the stability of humanity, of living your daily lives. If you didn't have that repression of masculinity, right, what you would have is just people killing themselves. We would never be able to own video games because everybody would be dying. So that repression is almost a necessity, but its effect on the male, it could be also very dangerous, right? Because they start feeling, in the sense of a Fight Club, like something is lost from them, or that there's something negative from the world that's being taken from them, because they can sort of sense that they have this fire within them, this power that they want to punch somebody, but they can't do it, right? And that's a very truthful emotion that lives within them, and society is constantly telling them that they can. Sometimes they may see some stuff that is wrong in society, and they have to let it happen. They have to be complacent sheeps, because in theory they will be castigated for those, they can get sent to prison or whatever. But they're telling them that you can't just act on that excess testosterone you have as a male to solve your conflicts, because society just doesn't work out like that. So in that aspect, Fight Club also shows you that their masculinity, even though they're able to be awakened by it, eventually can lead to destruction if it doesn't have some balance to it. And again, that's very reflected to modern society, right? A lot of people are being driven now towards masculinity because they feel that something's being taken away from them. But then in that process, they might loosen themselves to ideas that are too dangerous. That is just, it's just they're getting taken advantage by somebody like Tyler Durden, who's given them this philosophy to fill every hole within that search that they were looking for masculinity. Well, obviously this film is very much males, like it's mostly about males, and it does have a very big female player, Helena Bonham Carter. The film at one point says that this is a generation of men raised by women, which you kind of do understand that, right? Because all these men, whether it was your teachers or your mothers or absentee fathers, it is the female that has grown the men. As such, what they've been picking up in is the ideas of female identity for themselves. So again, their maleness continues to be repressed, and that's not something that's something that's more damaging than anything. You want to have a strong role male models, but at the same time, females act almost as I hate saying female because it sounds like I'm this describing women very horribly. But when you think about, let's say, women, they're also able to bring that balance that the male needs, so it doesn't lose themselves in destruction. Like if you have a female, it brings some balance, so you don't start being violent, and you're able to control yourself and actually be guided by it, which is almost like a necessity for the human being. And Fight Club shows that with Helena Bonham Carter, that she almost acts as that, right? That you have to be less of this violent asshole and turn yourself into something better for it. So I guess I just leave it like that because I think we have the gist of the ideas, right? The whole context of it. But it does follow it. What I found that amazing about Fight Club is how almost one to one is showing some aspects of society, and this is because you can sort of calculate how things play out, right? Well, this male has lost some part of himself, so if he finds it again, he's gonna kind of want to search for it, and he's gonna feel resentful at anybody that tries to take it away from it. So then he might become violent later. So you always have to balance that human being, like a form, like an animal that you have to balance out, because if it gets too aggressive, that's a problem. But you do also don't want it to have that aggression repressed, because there's some goodness that comes from it, right? Like honor, dignity, and the ability to feel better about themselves. We just leave it like that, fam. Thank you very much, and GG's.